Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you today. It's a very special day when I get joined by my wife, Shannon, who joins me each and every week. You guys send us email at Spartan Nation Mail, MAIL at yahoo.com. You put in the subject line Raiders Q&A. You guys send us those. No, we don't read those. Those go to our staff and they get read then, and then they get processed. If they're too long, they don't even get considered. You got to keep them short and pithy. And then we don't do comments. It's got to be
Right.
questions. Comments don't get read, they get processed out. We just get so much email. And then they start looking for a thread, meaning, is there a lot of questions on one subject? Usually you can figure out what those questions are going to be. And then they just select one and they get to do it. So we'd love to hear from you. Remember, you can email us once a week per email address. Once a week per email address. Send it to Spartan Nation Mail, MAIL at yahoo.com. Shannon joins me, though, each and every week, and she reads your emails. Now, she is a Raider fan. I'm not. Doesn't mean I hate him at all. I love the people in the organization. It's a great organization, great people. She is a diehard fan, but it's a good mix of yin and yang, I guess is a way that you could say it. But she's clearly the better looking part of this relationship, and she is my sweetie and my bride. And you join us because the people recommended it,
They did.
and they're the ones that asked us in an airport. So let's go, Shannon.
All right.
I bet we got a lot of them today.
We do. All right. Uncle Hondo, I am a lifelong Raider fan. I am so sad about my franchise, but I wanted to say how much I respect how you cover us and our fare. You have made this journey easier, but I'm still sad. What is your word of hope for today? Carlos in Oakland.
Well, first of all, very kind words for
Hmm.
thanking me how we cover your team. You know, one of the things that I think journalists um, have, not all by any stretch, but I think some, I think it permeates journalism, is they have a sense of entitlement.
Hmm.
I always laugh when you hear journalists complain about the food they serve in the press box. Well, they don't have to serve anything. We're
Exactly.
there to work. So
That's a blessing.
yeah, it's a blessing whatever they put up there, and I've never understood that. Um, I I one time heard a media guy complaining because these people only serve hot dogs. Well, there
It's
are a lot of
rude.
people in this world that would love a hot dog. I love a hot dog,
I
so
know they're good.
I love hot
I
dogs.
don't complain.
And anyways, I'm just saying, um, and so I always try to give fair coverage. I try to listen. There have been times the Raiders have come to me and said, "Hey, I think this was unfair," and I've told them I disagree. You know those times, and
Mhm.
then there have been times I'm like, you know what? I see your point. I think you're right. Okay, I've had that with players who've done that. I've had players' parents. I've had fans. So I really try to approach it with the principle of treat people the way you want to be treated.
Exactly.
I know when I talk about players or people, I always say, how would I want someone to write this if this was my daughter or my son? And that's the approach I always try to take, and I just try to be fair with it. So I appreciate your kind words. If I had to give you a word of hope, this is the word of hope that I would give you. Obviously, when Al Davis started to age, he was not I was not covering the team, but people who were around the team told me that he was not his mental acuity was not what it used to be. So since that started, the Raiders' only consistency has been inconsistency.
Hmm.
Now, I want to go back to Josh McDaniels when Mark Davis told him and Dave Ziegler, if you beat the Patriots, you're going to get another year. Okay. And then just a short time later, they're in Detroit for Monday Night Football, and Mark decided to go a different direction. I would say to you this: Mark has made it abundantly clear that Pete's going to be here, going to be allowed to ride this out a little bit. So Mark clearly, because that happened before,
Hmm.
has the right to change his mind. He's the owner. But if you're asking me, what is the hope here? Well, the one thing since Al started to, which we all do with age, that's not a slam on him at all. Um, it looks like going to say, okay, we're going to go now for consistency.
So important.
What do you have to lose? Now, my
Exactly.
friend Shy, well, our friend, we love Shy, by the way. Love you, Shy. Uh, left me a voicemail yesterday, and he's a very successful businessman, great friend of ours, great Raider fan, and he talked about consistency is great in business, but it's just winning in football. And I agree with Shy there, but he's a fan. The point is, the just winning comes with consistency.
Exactly.
Okay, and he mentioned Pittsburgh, which can't win a playoff game. All right, but they've been consistent. They have Super Bowls, and I think that that's very important to recognize. Is even you're right. They haven't won Super Bowls as of late, but they've been a consistent winner. Now, one of the problems is if you have consistency for the sake of consistency, that's not good. So you need to have clarity at the top. Remember, everything rises and falls with
leadership.
it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a football team, if it's a synagogue, if it's a church, if it's a if it's a business, if it's a family, everything rises and falls on leadership. So you have to have that consistent vision. But then you have to have the person at the front with the vision to say, okay, we have to tweak here and here. We're going to stay on this path. So I'm going to use only this as an example. I'm not advocating for it. If Pete Carroll says this is the vision, this is where we're going, but continually tells us this was the game plan, we didn't do the game plan, then you got to get rid of who's ever not executing the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
So winning is a product of consistency,
Right.
but consistency doesn't always produce winning.
Mm-hmm.
It's consistency with a commitment of where you're going, not just a consistency to stay the status quo. And if you're looking for a word of encouragement today, it appears like for the first time since really Al started to digress, that the Raiders may be going in that direction. And then now you have a head coach who's one of only a couple in the history of the world to win a college and a pro championship, who I don't believe has lost 1 ounce of his football acumen. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out. But I don't think he has. And to me, that is the word of hope. But thank you for those kind words on covering the Raiders.
Hendo, I love the podcast. Thank you. The season is over. Wow. Especially with the Chiefs healthy and back to form. The Broncos riding on top and the Chargers are getting it figured out. My question, do we find a new OC or do we trade for a new quarter? Then dedicate to improving the trenches. Thanks again, John Shune.
So, John, couple of things I want to address there. The season's not over unless the only benefit you see from the season would be a playoff run. And when you're a franchise whose motto is just win, baby, that's a fair, if that's the only way. So with me, I think you're right. This isn't a playoff team, but I didn't think that when the season started. That being said, you could still win this season by turning over every single stone and saying, what can we do this year to make us better next year?
Right, right.
If you just up and say, okay, the season's over, we'll come back and get ready for the draft, you're throwing away valuable games. Now, first thing I would do, bench Max. He's too valuable.
Right, right.
He's too valuable. I mean, if you have a beautiful canary yellow Corvette, and I am going to buy one of those one day.
Can I be your front seat date?
You can be my front seat date, baby, the rest of my life. I don't care if we're on a bicycle built for two, you can be my front seat guest. But anyways, I'm not going to take my Corvette up and down a dirt road. Inside joke there. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I would take my truck, and I mean, I have a beautiful, expensive truck, a beautiful, nice truck. I've gone off-roading on that. And you're like, Shannon's like, oh, okay. But I wouldn't take my Corvette.
No.
And so Max is the Bugatti. Max is the elite of the elite. Elite of the elite. He's your Michael Jordan. He's your Irvin Magic Johnson. He's your Kobe Bryant. And I just go to him and say, listen, Max, love you. You were so healthy for so many years. Last 3 years, there's been injuries. You're out. You're out. And that's going to make him mad.
Yeah, but
But I would explain to him, hey, you agreed to stay here because we were going to be championship focused. We need you in 27. We need you in 26.
mhm.
Just get well. And again, I love Max. We love Max. Support Max. He's a friend. He gonna hate that. But I would
Which
do
is understandable, but
because he's a competitor.
but he's also wise. I think he
He's
understands.
super smart. That is the biggest thing that people don't know about Max. You know, they see the tats and the boisterous and you guys have no clue. He is smart. He's one of the smartest people you'll ever, and doesn't mean you can't have tats and be
Oh,
smart. But
exactly.
I'm saying they see that and they think, see ball, get ball. No, Max Crosby's, that's what makes him elite. He understands geometry. Hey, what's the quickest way to get to the quarterback? What kind of angles can he uses angles? He's smart. He's terrific in the boardroom. He is great in the locker room. He is just all of that. But that's that kind of thing. So it's done if your focus is purely playoffs in 25. I agree. But I think now your focus has to be, okay, how do we win the rest of this offseason? And that is, and so what was the last part of that question he put on there?
Do we find a new OC or do we trade for a new QB?
Well,
Then dedicate to improving the transit.
well, first of all, I think you have to make a decision. Um, you know, the biggest consistency with the Raiders is they've not had a franchise quarterback. Okay. And I know that's going to make some Derek Carr fans frustrated. So let me rephrase it this way. There are only a handful of Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so once you understand that those are unicorns, Max Crosby, there are only a handful of those type of players. Once you understand those are generational players, then you step back and say, okay, what else is out there? Okay, I think Derek Carr was a franchise quarterback. I really do believe that, but did not get utilized. And so the next question is, okay, obviously somebody in the franchise wanted Geno. There were people in the franchise that wanted Sam Darnold, and there were people in the franchise that didn't want Sam Darnold. Okay, and look how good Sam's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is, look at Joe Flacco. Is for whatever reason, the Raiders picked Geno.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever that reason is, it doesn't matter. And now they're not using Geno the way that. So let me give you a great example. I'll give you a wonderful example. Okay, if you came to me with a medical question, I'm going to. I'm going to
sit back and sip my coffee.
Okay, let me just say this. If you were coming at me with a medical question, I'm going to tell you two words. You did. Okay. I can't help you. It's not my gifting. It's not it's not what my gift is. She's gifted. She's one of only, in fact, I had a doctor tell us once, tell me once, she's the only nurse he knows of that has admitting privileges, meaning she can admit people into the hospital with what she does because she's such a respected nurse. Okay. But if you went to Shannon and said, hey, what would you have gone with a quarters coverage, or would you have kind of gone with a cover two? And what about the under scheme with the tackles? She's going to look at you and say, Raiders.
Go ask my husband.
Go ask my husband. Okay. Different gifts. So the Raiders wanted Geno, and then they're not using Geno at his strengths. Mm-hmm. It is illogical. It's illogical. It's like, okay, we're going to make this. And then you go back to Chip's first press conference in which I lauded him, saying, I don't have a system. I adopt it to my players. So the first thing I'm going to ask is, are we committed to Geno? and they are at least temporarily. I would say at least this year and next year. And then number two is, if we are, why isn't Chip using him in the way we want? Now, is it somebody telling Chip, don't do it? And if it is, then they got to get everybody on the same page. If it's Chip not doing it, then you got to go to him and say, listen, this is how we want it done. If you can't do it, we will replace you. Or you got to figure out what the problem is. So I think the Raiders absolutely have to address quarterback long term. I said it last year when they signed Geno. It's a bridge quarterback. You don't get a 13-year vet and expect you're going to have him for another 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Matthew Stafford. We love Matthew and Kelly, but Matthew would have been a bridge quarterback, 2 years tops. And the Raiders have to address this with a young quarterback. If they don't think that Aiden O'Connell has any future, then go look at, is there a young quarterback we can go sign off somebody's practice roster? If they think he might be, and again, I'm not saying he is or isn't. If they think he might be, then you got to look at playing him this year. If you think, hey, Cam Miller, and I don't think Cam's ready, but if you think Cam Miller might be, you got to get Cam Miller some reps. If you think Kenny Pickett might be, you got to give Kenny Pickett some. To me, you're married to Geno, you got to pay the contract out. But when you're no longer a playoff team, realistically, then I think you have to look under every stone. So to me, I think you have to address quarterback long term. But that doesn't mean you just go pick a guy. That's like saying, I want to get married to the first woman you see. Will you marry me? No, you wait and find one that you are like, man, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I think you've got to fall in love with that quarterback, because it is hard to develop a quarterback. I'm gonna tell you a great Jim Irsay story. I talked to Jim about this one time, and it was by the way, in the interest of full disclosure, every interaction I had with Jim was very unique. You remember the one I told you about at the Super Bowl, which I won't talk about publicly, but I enjoyed Jim Irsay. He was a quality owner. I always found him to be very direct, very blunt, very honest. And I asked him about Peyton Manning and the development of Peyton Manning. And he said, we were in love with Peyton.
Right.
And so when people were telling us we'd made a mistake, get rid of Peyton, it never even crossed our mind, because we were married to him. And he talked about how hard it is to develop quarterbacks in today's society. And think about Peyton, that was decades ago. Mm-hmm. Because if everyone wants it right now, right away, and you got to let guys develop. And so he said this to me, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically, you don't pick that quarterback till you're in love with him. And when you say, that is my guy, why? Because then when you and I got married, we knew we are right. Each other's ride or die. No matter what we go through, you and I are committed to each other. And so to me, everyone says, well, just go pick a first round quarterback. Well, 60% of them fail. It's actually higher than that at quarterback. So you have to have the mental commitment to somebody to say, this is our guy. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going back to the point on when I say they haven't had a franchise quarterback, they haven't had that guy they've stayed committed to.
Right.
They didn't stay committed to Derek. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of reasons why, some legit, some illegitimate. They didn't stay with Jimmy. They didn't stay with Aiden O'Connell. They didn't stay with Gardner Minshew. And clearly there's a lot of questions with Geno. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hope you're seeing the trend here. Yep. So to me, you have to address, what's our scheme? Is our offensive coordinator committed to that scheme, and does he have the ability to execute that scheme? And then our quarterback. But they've got to address quarterback long term, but you just don't go pick one. And they just don't grow in a tree. You got to wait and find the guy you found. That's why if you got a guy you like, then you don't pick him in the first round. But if you, and let me just say something to you, and I'm going to defend Antonio Pierce here for a minute. He loved Jaden. He thought Jaden was a ride or die franchise quarterback. Now, nobody was willing to let the Raiders trade up. And I'm telling you, factually, because I had people, you remember one conversation that we were talking to an NFL owner who was joking with us about how the Raiders had called him to Let's Go.
Right.
And he's like, we're not moving. We're not moving. But Antonio had that commitment to Jaden, and it appears it was the right commitment. But if you don't have that commitment, you don't take a guy in the first. Your first round draft pick has to be a guy. That's my ride or die.
Right.
I'm
Right.
putting that guy out there. When they went, God bless John Gruden. Colton Miller was his guy. And I love Colton. Great left tackle, better person than a player, and he's a great player. And so they put him on the left. And when people were like, what a terrible pick, Colton Miller sucks. Well, look what he developed into. Okay. You that first round guy, okay, Ashton Jeanty. Love the pick. Okay. You're committed to him. You picked him 6 overall. And he's touching the ball one time in the first quarter against a team that struggles against the rush. Illogical. So, anyways, I think there are a bunch of issues that have to be resolved. John's question addresses a lot of them, but it's got to be in an order. Everything's got to be done decently in an order. Everything rises and falls on leadership. You have to address the entire thing first. Okay, what are we committed to? Does the personnel we have, meaning leadership, are they committed to it, and have they had the ability? And then do we have personnel? You got to do this thing in order, and that's how I would address it. I'm sorry, go to the next one. That was a long answer.
Well, that's all right. Can I borrow your pen right there, please?
Sure.
Hondo, I trust your football brain and how you understand the game. I know you say there are a myriad or plethora, your word, of issues. What is the biggest issue that the Raiders have faced in your time here, or are facing? Bethany M in Cleveland, Ohio.
So Bethany, first of all, I just talked about it, consistency, but like my buddy Shy says, it's got to be a consistent commitment to winning. And I just literally went through all that. I mean, I talked about, you got to get it. If you think you're waiting, okay, Jaden Daniels is a really good quarterback. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not Tom Brady. So if you're just waiting for one of them, I mean, the Raiders had some great quarterbacks, some great ones. I mean, I think Rich Gannon is probably the most underrated Raider quarterback of all time. Jim Plunkett was fantastic. Snake, by the way, I just read the book Snake. Go read that book. If you're a lifelong Raider fan, you're going to love the book. If you're a new fan, you're going to love the book. And if you are wanting to understand the mentality of the Raider organization, if you want to understand the mentality of the Raider organization, Snake's a great book. But anyways, read that one more time. Read that question. I want to make sure that.
What is the biggest issues that the Raiders have faced?
But I just think you've got to get everything on board. And you've got to address, once everything's on board, then you got to address quarterback of the future. Because even if you're doing everything the way Geno does, Geno's still not the long-term answer. And again, hearing some interesting stuff about Raider scouts in Mendoza at Indiana. Just keep an eye out there on that. I'm not saying he's going to be the pick. I'm just saying that I'm hearing that I'm hearing from people, other teams. I'm hearing from people around Indiana and some other things that the Raiders seem to have keen interest in Mendoza, which they should. They need a quarterback.
Right.
And they're trying to find out, is he our ride or die? It doesn't mean that he is. It just means they're doing their due diligence. So,
which is good.
Yeah, so big ups to John Spytek. Let's keep going.
Hondo, I think with
What are you pointing to? Oh, all right.
I think with Max Crosby's
She's writing me notes over here telling me what to do.
with Max Crosby's desire to win, that Mark Davis should ask Max how he would feel about being traded to a potential playoff team. I would hate to see Max go, but he deserves better than this, and he might actually help the Raiders more in the long run by netting extra draft picks. I think a trade option should be offered to Max and let him decide. What do you say, Mike Peterson from the Villages?
I think it's a great
Mm,
question. Here is how I would approach it. I'm gonna use Mark Davis's voice.
okay.
Okay, this is not Hondo, but if he's asking me if I were the owner of the Raiders, this is what Hondo would do. I would bring Max in and say, Max, we promised you if you would resign with us that we were going to be holistically committed to winning. And we gave you our word, and I'm not a liar. So you're sitting the rest of the year because I'm holistically committed to winning and I can't win this year. And so I want you to work out. I want you to be here. I want you to be a coach on the field. I want you to help us mentor these young players because next year is going to be a huge building block for a run at a championship or at least a run at something significant in 27. I want you to know, Max, we're not making you available because you are Irvin, Michael, and Kobe. You are a generational talent that if we had put more talent and better consistency around you, you would be defined by Super Bowls. But I also want you to know, Max, that we are going to get there. I am keeping my word to you. We are going to address a lot of issues here long term. And I'm not making you available because you're a unicorn.
Mm,
Because I can get 3 picks back, and the chances are only one of them would pan out, and none of them would be at your level
for sure.
at the third most important position in football. And that's exactly how I would address it.
That is a great way to address it, too. Yeah. Hey, Hondo, I believe your podcast is the best.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
I also listen to a few others, but please keep up the great work. Um, some pundits out there say Kelly's offense is predictable and too simple for the NFL. Have you talked to any defense coordinators about it? And is that what they believe? I trust you and your connections. Oh, somewhere is a sketchbook from 1977 from when I was a kid where I wrote out how Kenny Stabler led the Raiders back to some last minute wins. Maybe I subconsciously wanted to be a sports writer. We need to hear your story sometime about how you got into it. Thanks and God bless you and your family. Andrew from Santa Cruz, California.
Thank you, Andrew, for that.
Yeah.
I got into sports journalism for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest was Rick Goslin, who's a tremendous mentor of mine. He's been on this podcast multiple times. He is considered to be probably the greatest NFL writer to ever live. He will tell you he didn't invent the mock draft. Others, including NFL owners, would disagree with him. He just said he perfected it because he's extremely humble. Um, and Rick Goslin was a Spartan. And so I looked up to him, and then he became a mentor, and now he's a dear friend. I don't like Rick. I love him, and I honor him and esteem him. And so he would write in ways that made you feel like you were right there. He wrote conversationally. He had tremendous connections. I can tell you that many of my NFL sources would not be my sources were it not for my relationship with Rick Goslin.
Mm.
I've had many say to me, all right, I remember one guy telling me, all right, kid, if you're good enough for Rick, you're good enough for me, but don't betray me because if you do,
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to trust Rick.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah, that was big. And I remember at one owner's meeting, you heard me and an owner talking about Rick, and so he certainly inspired me along with other things. But thank you for that. So, what was the question?
Um, some pundits out there say that Kelly's
Oh,
offense is predictable
uh,
and too simple.
I can tell you this: I have heard that criticism from NFL people. Shannon actually has too, because thinking about one particular conversation we had, and Shannon was just sitting there as a fan, and we got off the call, and she said, "I'm depressed," or she said, I think you said, "I'm down" or something. I have heard that criticism. I have. Um, I will tell you that If you go back to the Chargers game, when there was an interception on the very first play of the game, that the Chargers were completely anticipatory of a play like that. And Shannon will tell you, we were told that from people in the Chargers organization. Um, and I'll just leave it there. But what I would say to you is, I have heard that criticism, and I've heard
Me too.
it. Yeah. And not from me.
And not, yeah, yeah. That is actually accurate.
All right, let's go.
We all wonder that. All right. Hello, Hondo and company.
Oh, are you my
That's
company?
adorable. A common criticism I hear from former Seahawk players is how they felt Pete Carroll coddled Russell Wilson, which obviously relates to what we as Raiders fans are seeing now. However, I don't think this is the wrong approach, and he is certainly not the only head coach who has taken it.
Mhm.
A quarterback is a very unique position and I think deserves its own approach. A general doesn't address his infantrymen and captains the same. The standards are different. What are your thoughts, JV from SF Bay area?
All right, that's a great question. And so let's look at this two ways. All right. So John Gruden was very tough on Derek Carr.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But John Gruden didn't go after Derek in front of the team.
Which, yeah.
Okay, which is
How
their
leadership.
approach. Okay. And now Josh McDaniels came in, and Josh McDaniels' approach was, and he had been with Tom Brady, Josh ripped anybody for their mistakes in front of the entire team, including himself. I remember one time, whoever it was that runs and gets stuff off the field. I don't remember if it was somebody with a water bottle. I think it was a kicking tee, if I remember correctly, but if I'm wrong, I'm not lying. He didn't like the way somebody got off the field quick enough.
I think it was a kicking tee because I remember this story.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you remember who was telling us. And so he called him out in front of the team. Now, he wasn't unfair with Derek. It was just, and so Derek had been used, and let me just say this, anybody that calls Derek Carr a wimp, you don't know Derek, just shut up. There's nothing wimpy about Derek. You may not like the way he played quarterback. That's fine. You may not like him for any number of reasons that you're entitled to. Same reason you may not like me, but he wasn't a wimp. But so Derek had always led from that approach. So then Josh comes in, and it was so drastically different. Now, I will tell you, there were people who felt like Derek was coddled by John Gruden. They loved John, they loved Derek. It wasn't that they didn't love him, but they felt like John coddled. So when Josh came in, they liked that. They liked it. That one time, Josh showed a video of what he was trying to do and ripped himself.
Mm.
They liked it. They felt like everybody was on the same footing.
Mm-hmm.
Here is what I think. Who cares? Just win. So if you feel like, hey, and John Gruden's won Super Bowls, and that's how he handles his quarterback. Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator for the greatest quarterback to ever play. And Tom Brady got ripped in front of the team. So I think it's trying to make everything fit. All right. I like sweaters. Not everybody likes sweaters. Doesn't mean sweaters are good or bad. My point is that who cares? To me, the issue isn't coddling. It's what do I got to do to win? Okay. Jimmy Johnson caught a guy once. I think it was a running back for falling asleep in a team meeting. And basically the player made the comment, well, Emmitt Smith falls asleep all the time. He goes, yeah, the difference is one's a Hall of Fame guy, one isn't. Okay. We have 8 children. We parent them drastically different.
Oh, for sure.
Dexter gets parented different than Shane. Travis gets parented different than Noah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you parent differently. To me, and so listen, I'm going to tell you an area where I failed as a parent. is when I first started parenting, my approach was, man, I love my dad. He was my best friend, and I'm going to raise my kids exactly how my dad raised me. Well, that was a failure decision because all of my children weren't me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I failed to recognize was that you can't parent every child the same. And so God had to really direct my path to teach me how to be a better father. And I remember saying to my older children, I failed you because I tried to parent the way grandpa parented me, and you're not me. And so, you know what? God's been dealing with my heart, and I'm going to be changing some things. And so, to me, I don't think it's a one size. It's like, do you want your coordinators in the booth or on the field? It doesn't matter. I want to
Mm-hmm.
win.
Mm-hmm.
I want to win. So, there you go.
Hi, Hundo and Shannon. You are both awesome. I think us Raider fans need to have patience as everything is so new. New coaches, new schemes, new players, or players in new positions. It's a challenge and takes time to jail. Plus, a lot of young guys. I think we keep all the coaches and just give it some time. We do need some added depth and some players in key positions along the O line and defensive backs, maybe receiver, but not an overhaul. Honestly, I don't even think our quarterback is that far off. You give any average quarterback time in the pocket and or a run game and they will look like a hero. What are your thoughts? Sincerely, Mark.
Um, I don't necessarily think you keep every coach. I think that's a Pete Carroll decision, and you don't talk to anyone else. Now, when I say that, I think you put Tom Brady, John Spytek, and Pete Carroll in a room because of their roles. And I think if you are Spytek, so I've shared this story before, I'll share it again. We have a very good friend who's an NFL general manager, very successful, and he sits down with his coach every year and goes over his staff. And his belief is, if other teams aren't trying to hire my staff,
Mm,
why am I keeping them?
that's good.
I always laugh. Some people have said to me multiple times over our marriage, man, Shannon is so beautiful. She's so great. Aren't you worried about other guys? No, I don't worry about other guys. I worry about being the best I can for
Mm.
her. I'm not worried about keeping her. I'm worried about taking care of her. Okay. I don't want to be married to the lady that no other guy thinks is pretty. Where were we? Oh, we were we were walking through a store. I think it was Sunday. We were walking through a store, and a guy called you Barbie, and she looked at him and smiled, and he just gave her a compliment. It wasn't inappropriate. Gave her a very nice compliment. And I said to her, I said, you know what? I really appreciate that other people recognize how beautiful you are. I'm glad. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the guy that nobody. I'm glad that people think my wife is beautiful. And so what I would so this general manager says to his coach, why are people not trying to hire this guy?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's go through this. Robbie Leonard. Multiple teams want Robbie Leonard. Okay, if I'm the Raiders, I am making sure Robbie Leonard goes nowhere. Okay, I I'm going to go through and look at all my staff.
Mhm. That's good.
Okay, so let's use Brennan Carroll as an example, Pete's son. Okay, Raider fans have thrown a lot at him
Mhm.
because he's Pete's son. But I'm telling you, I was the one who kept telling you Pete Carroll was the option. And then I was hearing from NFL people, go back and look at all the podcasts during the coaching search. And I was the one telling you that I was hearing from NFL people that Pete was going to bring his sons with him. So when I knew that, I began to investigate. Okay. Brennan Carroll was highly respected as a coach. And I talked to multiple coaches. Some of them you were on the calls because we were driving, who told me, yeah, that guy's really good. And Brennan Carroll, if he were fired tomorrow, would have zero problem getting a job in the next coaching cycle.
Mhm.
He's extremely respected. Now, You still want to have that conversation with John Spytek because sometimes coaches can have their vision tainted. I know a head coach, Shannon and I both know a head coach. There was a time we were friends with him who kept a guy because the guy's wife and his wife were close. And it was a college situation. And I said to the athletic director, why are you not in there questioning him? He goes, well, I don't ever question my head coaches on their staff. I disagree. Now, I don't think that Brennan has a job here and he's protected. I think Pete would fire him because I think that's Pete's character. His commitments to the Raiders first. But you still want Spytek to be able to go through the entire staff. Okay, is this guy going to get interest from other teams? Now, sometimes they don't get interest from other teams because they've made it clear to other teams, I have no interest in leaving. I think you've got to go through and make Pete talk about why he wants every coach because Pete's smart. And then you go through and maybe you say, and I'm not going to pick a position because I'm not picking on any coach in particular. Okay, XYZ coach, why do you think nobody wants them? Well, this, and this. Maybe it's, well, their position group didn't perform well this year. But then you're like, yeah, but 3 of our starters got hurt. So nobody's interested because people got hurt and we didn't perform at a high level. Okay, well, we still want him then.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's, well, no, everybody was healthy and we sucked. Okay, let's get rid of him. So I agree with some of what you say. I'm not ready to say that you keep all the coaches because I think there are some coaches on this staff that you have to have a conversation about. I'm not willing to say right now that any of them should be fired.
Yeah.
I mean, but I do think you have to have those conversations. I don't think you can just say a blanket commitment to a coaching staff. Let's keep going.
Halfway through the Chiefs game, I turned to my 22-year-old son, who has never seen the Raiders win a playoff game, and said, how can we possibly be worse this year than the last few years? No consistency. Besides that, do you think O-line or quarterback is a top priority? I know the Raiders need both desperately. Gus.
Gus, I'm going to say this to you, and I realize this may frustrate some of you. Quarterback is the most important position in football. If you don't have a guy that you is your ride or die, that you think this is my guy, then I always say you build your offense and defensive line. That's where championships are made. Once there, I mean, at the highest of levels. I mean, Talise Fuaga, the Raiders loved him and thought they were going to end up with him, and he would have been the Raiders' right tackle. But Brock Bowers fell. I have no problem with picking Brock Bowers, who is a generational Max Crosby. I mean, I think he has a shot of being the greatest tight end in the history of the game. So I have no issues with that pick. But my point is what if you would have just picked a first round quarterback, and most of those, even from that class, have failed? Many of them, not most, but many. If you're not married to a guy in the first round, which you see as a ride or die, you build on the lines, you build offensive line. Okay, I know that the Raiders really liked a defensive lineman in this past draft who's a great player. And there was a chance if he had dropped, they would have made that pick. But he didn't drop, and Ashton was there, and they loved Ashton. But to me, it's if there's not a quarterback you're married to, you always build offensive line and defensive line. That's where you go first round. That's the biggest one to me because that's the highest prize, highest value. And offensive and defensive line are the lowest rate of failure. And I think that's a direction you go. But in those situations where there's a player that you think is a dude, a Brock Bowers, you go get him.
This one, part of it we've already addressed, but I'd like your opinion on what it would take for the Raiders to actually consider trading Max Crosby. We all love Max and want to see him have the opportunity to win while he can. So the question of trading him during our rebuild phase for draft picks isn't out of the question. What would it take to create the deal that the Raiders could not refuse? if the Cowboys, 49ers, Lions, or other competitive teams made a trade offer for Max. Thank you for your opinion on this, Chad in Sacramento.
Well, several teams have reached out, and there's no price that the Raiders would pay. Now, I'm friends with Max. That's not secret. Um, if you say to me, we're willing to trade you Patrick Mahomes, quarterback is the most important position in the National Football League. And so if you are devoiding the emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, I wouldn't trade Max, but
No,
I,
really.
I have bias,
Mm-hmm.
and I admit that. But you're trading a generational player for a generational
Right.
player. To me, that is the only way I let Max go. Because if you're not, I'm not letting a generational player go for a
For a
non-generational
non-generational player,
player.
for sure.
Just not doing it.
Makes sense.
I mean, I'm not, and let me just say, I wouldn't trade him for a generational defensive end. That's who he is, and he already fits my culture. And the only position that is more important than rush end is left tackle, but you have a very good, solid left tackle in Colton. So the only position I'm trading Max for is a generational quarterback. And I'm sorry, there
Yeah.
isn't that's not going to happen. So there you go.
Hi, Uncle Hondo and Aunt Shannon. I feel like when Pete had Russell Wilson in Seattle, Russ was allowed to improvise often. When looking at 22 film of Gino, he ran a lot of shotgun formation then too, but you could tell um, he was more successful that year. Gino looks a lot more hesitant, robotic, and rigid on the field this season. Could the reason be that Gino is being instructed to play strictly within the system as opposed to Gino truly being who he is as a football player? It seems to go against everything that Pete believes in when coaching football players, and that is what's frustrating him the most. Thank you, Jeffrey from Muscatine.
Uh, I'm going to say this, and I know this makes people angry, and I don't care. I really like Gino the human. You know that. Yeah, I've shared with you several. If you were to know Gino, it's really impossible not to like him. He is not playing football the way that he played at his best. There is clearly something off. And I'm going to use it this way. Shannon is one of the most pleasant, warmest, kindest, loving people you'll ever meet in the entire world. That is her nature. I There are some people that they're not. That's not their nature. So if Shannon's ever not being warm, chatty, open, kind, which is very, very rare. She's not a moody person at all. I love that about her. It's one of the things I love most about her. I'll say to her, "What's wrong, babe?" Nothing. No, nope. And how many times you're not doing that? Something's wrong, and I care what's going on. And she doesn't do it in a manipulative way. Sometimes you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know something's wrong. Gino is not Gino. And because of that, this is the disconnect. This is the disconnect. And I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. I hope to get to the bottom of it no later than after the Broncos game. Not this next game, but the next game. I'm hoping to get to it. And I think I'm like a rabbit. I mean, I'm like a beagle on a rabbit's trail. I'm on it. I think I'm close, but I'm not there. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but I'm digging on it. And it's interesting to me. This is the football is not a Madden game. It's not an EA sports game. It's made up of individuals and people. I told you guys this years ago. There was a great player whose parents were going through a major divorce, so much so that both parents were asking him for money for the divorce.
Mm.
And both parents were saying, if you give them tickets to your game, we're not going. And the player was having a terrible season and it just didn't sit right. And everybody was ripping this player. And I walked up to him one day and I just said, can I just talk to you as Hondo the human and not a journalist? He goes, yeah, sure. Because I had relationship with him. I said, I know you. Something's not right. Now, I'm not saying Gino's family's going through that.
No, right.
I just something's not right with his play. And with this guy, and he said to me, can I just call you? I said, yeah. So he called me and he's like, would you just pray with me? You remember that story. And I'm like, yeah. And he shared with me what was going on. So the rest of that season, I was critical of his play, but I understood these are still human beings. Max Crosby's still a son. He's still a dad. He's still a husband. Daniel Carlson, same. Every player here. Mark Davis is still a son who just lost his mom.
Right.
You've got all of these people involved. And they're still human. Now, I am not in any way implying that Gino's struggles are from, and I don't believe this, by the way. Remember, I told you I'm on the trail of the rabbit. I don't think any of it's personal. I think it's football related. But my point is sometimes people forget these are individuals. I realize they're hulking, huge human beings. I understand they make a lot of money. I understand that they play a sport that gets a massive amount of attention, but they're still people. They still have family members that get sick. They still have lives. And that's why I make people angry because I won't attack people individualistically. I'm not doing it.
It's not who you are though as a person.
No, and that's just not. And so what I would say to you is I agree with you. There is a disconnect with Gino. It's why if you go back and watch the post game press conference with Pete after the Chiefs, I asked him about the game plan. And I'm on this though. I'm on the rabbit trail. And I think I'm gonna have some answers here pretty soon. Let's keep going.
Hondo, I understand Charles Grant is not ready, but with the season looking like it is, I feel like to see what he can do and get some work with first team O line, Joe, in North Dakota.
Joe, by the way, love North Dakota. Love North Dakota, one of the most beautiful states in the world. If you're ever looking for a state that's underrated for a vacation, go up to North Dakota. It's beautiful. North Dakota, South Dakota. I love the Dakotas. Love it. I will say this to you. I feel like Charles Grant should be getting some reps this season. I don't know that I would say today. Okay. I don't know that I would say today. In fact, I would tell you I'm skeptical today. But I'm coming down the stretch of that last 6, 7 games. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you.
Hi, Uncle Hondo. Thanks for your non hyperbolic coverage of the Raiders. Given the unusual circumstances in the locker room, Christian Wilkins and Jermaine Pratt, coupled with the uninspired lackluster play, do you feel that Pete Carroll has lost the team? Keep up the good work, buddy. Kevin from Killeen, Texas.
Killeen, Texas, by the
Oh.
way. Thank you for your comments. Let me say this first of all. And Shannon's been with me when multiple players have thanked me for saying that the team didn't quit on Josh McDaniels. Now, I think 2 players did, but the locker room as a whole did not quit on Josh McDaniels. And a lot of fans have ripped me for that, but it's truthful. I mean, you've heard them say to me, thank you. Because when you say that they've quit, that means you're questioning their commitment to professionalism. Now, with Josh McDaniels, they didn't like him as a head coach, but Shannon and I can both tell you they loved him as a guy. They loved him. Even recently, I had one of the Raiders players say to us, I had talked about on a podcast how people talked about how Josh McDaniels sucked at offense, and he's only a good offensive coach because he had Tom Brady. And I made a comment on the podcast how look how good the offense is doing in New England this year. And literally one of them just said, hey, thanks for saying that. You know what? I'm so glad Josh is doing well. And it was a player that did not like him as a head coach. I don't think Pete's lost this locker room at all. These guys are still battling, still fighting. And I would tell you if I felt a locker
Mhm.
room had been lost. I would tell you unequivocally if a locker room had been lost. I think the locker room was lost last year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say that.
Yeah. But this, no, not even remotely close. Not even, I understand why you ask, but I'm telling you, it's not even remotely close. Do I think there have been, well, let's just leave it there. No, I don't think it's even remotely close.
All right. Hello, Mr. Carpenter. I hope your day is going well and the family is healthy. My question to you is why does it seem that everyone, fans and media, have JPJ as a center when he mainly was a guard in college, only playing center his senior year? To me, they're just playing him in his natural position. I don't get why everyone thinks he's just a center. Anyway, thank you for all that you do and your consistent efforts to keep Raider Nation up to date on what's happening, especially now in these very trying times. I'm 53 years old, and I think this last Sunday was the hardest game to watch as a Raider fan. Thank you, Christian Aquina.
Christian, great comments there. I don't understand why people think he's only a center. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, if the Raiders had kept him at center, I thought he was going to eventually be an all-pro. I feel the same thing about him at guard. I think he's a great interior offensive lineman. I like JPJ personally a lot. I like him as a player a lot. I think he's a wonderful young man. I think he's competitive. I think he's fiery. I think he is uh, all of the accolades I would give JPJ, the human being, I give as a player. I think equally of him. So I don't understand why some people think he's only a center. I think he's both. And I think whichever one they put him at, they need to just leave him there and let him develop into an all pro. But I like everything about the kid. There isn't one thing about JPJ I don't like. He is super fiery, super emotional, and I think at times that can hurt him a little bit, but that's part of maturing too. I mean, Shannon and I pray together every morning, and I don't want you to tell them, but what do we pray about our sons, Noah and Shane,
Yeah.
who are close to JPJ's age?
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing with him. It's just
Maturity.
maturity. But I don't mean that he's an immature,
But
stupid
there,
kid.
you haven't
Just,
lived a life.
I mean, sometimes people watch as fans in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s and forget you're dealing with kids.
Exactly.
JPJ's
Exactly.
a kid.
Our 28-year-old is much different than
We
our
we have
20 and 22-year-old.
we have multiple children older than JPJ. And so I understand he's a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Delmar DJ Glaze, the mule. He's a kid. Most of these guys are kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just let them mature a little bit.
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, you're a hulky, testosterone filled player with your pockets and your bank accounts full of millions of dollars. You're feeling good about it. Let him grow up a little bit. Just tap the brakes. But I love JPJ. Love the kid. Love every single cotton picking thing about. Well, I'm told I can't use the term cotton picking because that's supposed to be a term that is racially insensitive, and I don't.
Oh.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean it that way. So that's
I would.
I apologize. Yeah, I didn't mean it that way.
Well, no, it's just something that didn't used to be.
Yeah, it was a term my dad always used to use because if you've ever picked cotton, it's very and which we have, it hurts the ends of your fingers. So I apologize. I didn't mean that in an insensitive way. I meant it in a way of just it's one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so so I think sometimes people misunderstand that, and people don't get that. And but I think he's a center and a guard. So there you go. Next one.
Nat football.
Warning. The next question has nothing to do with football. So if you don't want to listen to questions that don't have anything to do with football, please stop listening now. However, if you're going to continue to listen, please don't bitch, moan, complain, because we don't care, because we warned you Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. It's not a football question. All right, here we go, honey.
Uncle Hondo and Aunt Shannon, you saved our marriage. We
Whoa,
all,
whoa, whoa.
I don't know. I haven't, that's all I said. We always wanted children, but found out after 8 years of marriage and trying that we were unable to conceive. It was a very difficult time. And then you all started sharing openly about Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter. He calls himself Carpenter, kind of like a dinosaur.
He goes, what's your name? Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter.
And while we were against adoption, our hearts melted watching the way that the two of you love him. We started looking into it, and over a year ago, in our adoption of a daughter, we started looking into it over a year ago, and our adoption of a daughter is final next month.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing so openly about the process and journey. We would love to make you the godparents of Gabrielle Miguel and want you to know how you changed our family. Caro and Solis.
okay. So let me say something to you first of all. Hey, Dexter, come here, please. I want to say this to you. I appreciate you wanting to make us godparents, but we can't do that, and I want to explain why. When you select somebody to be a godparent to your child, this is a very, very serious thing. What you're saying to them is, I am entrusting you to hold me accountable for the spiritual maturity of my child, that I'm going to raise that child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And you're going to hold me accountable if you see me living a life that isn't reflective of God and God's word. If you see me not raising my child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, that you're willing to step in because you value that in my child. And so we don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
But I challenge you to find two people who love the Lord and ask them, hey, would you be a godparent? And understand this is a lifelong commitment. Now, Dexter, can you say hi to Raider Nation?
Hi, Raider Nation.
And tell everybody, what's your name? What's your name?
Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter.
Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter. All right, can I have a kissy? I love you. Can you say goodbye to Raider Nation? Say bye, Raider Nation. Hey, what do you say when you see Raider fans?
Raider.
All right, there you go. Raiders. I love it. All right, so we told you, Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter. So, anyways, I hope you understand. It's not because we don't want to. What was her name? Gabriella?
The baby's name is Gabrielle.
Gabrielle Miguel. So glad you get a beautiful baby girl, but you raise her to love the Lord, and you pick godparents who are going to hold you accountable to raise that baby in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct that baby's path. Man, we're going to keep Gabrielle in our prayers. Congratulations on your new baby. Man, we love that little guy. And you're going to love her. And you raise her to love the Lord. And who knows, maybe one day Dexter will see a little Gabrielle Miguel and say, ooh, hallelujah. All right. Like I think of his mama. Thank you all for joining us today. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you again real soon.